Dog Works Radio is sponsored by Alaska Dog Works. Check out their website at alaskadogworks.com.
Start your day tomorrow with The Daily Dog with Michelle Forto, the morning podcast on Dog Works Radio. Apple Podcast reviewer Patty Christensen calls it funny, smart, and filled with all the info I want to know about dogs. I love this show. Wake up with The Daily Dog. Available on Dog Works Radio on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your shows.
Dog Works Radio Network presents Mushing Radio, hosted by Robert Forto. Mushing Radio is about dog-powered sports, living in the Great White North, and mushing. Visit our website at mushingradio.com. Here is your host, Robert Forto.
Hello and welcome, everybody. This is Robert Forto, and you're listening to Mushing Radio here on KVRF 89.7 in the Mat-Su Valley. RadioFreePalmer.org is our live streaming site. You can find all of our episodes over on DogWorksRadio.com. And be sure to follow us on social media by searching the same name, DogWorks Radio. And calling in from Western Massachusetts today is Marla Beebe. She runs Alaskan Huskies, and she is one of the athletes that's heading over to Sweden to run in the World Championships in October. Marla, how's it going?
Great, Robert. Nice sunny day here. Dogs are all chill, quiet at the moment.
It is a beautiful day in Alaska as well. Thank you very much for joining us. Marla, can you do us a favor and let our listeners know who you are and what you're all about, please?
Okay, so I'm Marla Beebe, and I own Hilltown Sled Dogs, and we are a touring and a racing kennel. We do a little bit of everything. We do dryland sprint racing in the fall, and we aspire to mid-distance racing in the winter. Just to give the big, so in the summer, we do summer sled dog camps. And we were featured in last summer's Mushing magazine all about our sled dog camps. And this is one of my 2 days off the entire summer. So, and we also do in the summer dog yard tours and hikes with a husky. And we do rides with carts and sleds and lessons. And I even teach people how to dryland mush or skidger or mush with their own dogs. So we try to do a little bit of everything, keep the dogs happy year-round.
It sounds like you are a busy kennel there in Massachusetts, and I have all sorts of questions for you, not only in regard to the Dryland Championships, but what you do the rest of the year, obviously the day job, if you will, in mushing. So my first question to you, Marla, is when did you get involved with mushing, and where did those first dogs come from?
Sure. So my first northern breed was an Alaskan Malamute, and she was my companion dog. And I'm a skier since age 5, and I've done everything on 2 skis. I did a lot of skiddering and backcountry skiing with her, and then I decided I wanted to get into mushing, and because that to me was the ultimate on 2 skis. You have nothing locking you in, and you're being pulled by animal power, and you're with nature. Animal nature and human nature. So when my daughter was 2.5, I said I got to go to Alaska before the glaciers melt, and I was at Iditarod 2007, and I helped a musher who from the Northeast who had moved, Bruce Litton. He was mushed with. He was a musher known for with diabetes, and he finished multiple Iditarods, and then I came back that summer, and I toured for a month from Fox all the way down to Kodiak Island. I was a nationally touring blues singer for 25 years, and I used my musical tour on my days off to meet as many mushers as possible. And Allie Zirkle is the musher that I connected the most with, and she offered me an opportunity to come back out, to go back and forth. Since I did have a young daughter, I was co-parenting. And I handled 2008 Iditarod for Allie and Alan. I also sang the national anthem there on Front Street at the start with Sarah Palin and the rest of them in the National Guard. And Allie retired a leader, B-team leader, to me at the end of the season, and that was the beginning of my team. 2007 to 2009, I went back and forth to Alaska until I began my own kennel.
That is pretty impressive, Marla. I had no idea that you were involved that heavily with distance mushing in particular. I've interviewed, I think you're the 9th person now that I've spoken to that are heading over to the championships. And by far, you are the one that's closest to our regular listener base, the folks that listen during Iditarod and Yukon Quest and whatnot. A lot of times this sprint mushing world is a little foreign to them. So I think a lot of our listeners, when you say the names Bruce Linton and Allie Zirkle and all of that, they really know exactly who you're talking about. So let's jump over to your camps that you offer. You had said that that's sort of your bread and butter, and it's really what you do every day to keep the lights on, if you will. What are those all about, and can you give us kind of a rundown of one of those?
Sure. For a little while there, I was toying with taking my team to the glacier, and I did spend a little time up there, but that would have taken me away from home for the whole summer, and having a young child, that's when they're off during the summer.
Right.
So once I put all my focus on my own sled dog camps, they just, they're packed now. I went from 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and this summer I'm running 6.5 weeks. So sled dog camps are great. Every kid gets their own 1 or 2 dogs, and it's their dog for the week, and they learn how to do everything with that dog from dog care. They scoop the poop, they water, they feed. That would be the dog chores. They do the dog care, which is they learn to tick check, to groom, to massage. We take them on hikes. I have 18 acres here. We'll hike down to a stream at the bottom of my property when it's hot. We have multiple trails. We walk our dogs on gentle leaders. That's the only way I can let strangers control them. And I have created this thing I called swim joring, where with the gentle leaders, my dogs are trained to pull you across the river and back. And that's probably my most fun that I do with the dogs in the summer. I just love it. And I live right by the river, which is a wild river. So they'll swim with their dogs, they'll hike with their dogs. The first level of mushing they learn is canine cross, where they have their own dog pulling with them. And in my older kids' camps, my overnight weeks, they'll learn about scootering, bike joring, and I'll demonstrate some rig racing.
That's a cool opportunity, I'm sure, for the kids. Now, you had mentioned that you also offer an overnight camp. This sounds like the perfect summer camp. They have summer camps for everything from guitar camps to, geek camps where they play video games and build computers and stuff. But if anybody's interested in dogs and mushing in particular, this sounds like the place to go.
For my overnight weeks, I do have overnight weeks, and I do have people actually that come from all over the country and Canada, in fact, and it's overnight, and at evening we focus on primitive skills, and our activity happens around the bonfire. We have a huge bonfire pit that's right next to the dog yard. So while the kids are learning to make their own food, are they doing primitive cooking, fish on a stick, bread on a stick? We had one of my handlers runs coonhounds and hunts. We had venison. We had local trout, local turkey. So we had game night. They, will mash corn and put it in the bamboo they cut to make to cook on a rock to make, little corn cakes. So we kind of fashion it. You spend a day out on the trail with your dogs, and now you've put them to bed, and now you got to take care of yourself. And they also learn some crafts, whether they're whittling sticks or making wooden spoons and forks, or working with cordage. We do a little bit of everything.
Marla, I'm 48 years old, and I would go to one of your camps.
Yeah, well, that's what everybody says. So I offered a women's weekend this weekend, and, I only had one person who actually, put her money where her mouth was. So, what did somebody say? If the dog has an issue, they're going to go take care of it. But a lot of people like the idea, but it doesn't mean they're able to commit to it with their adult responsibilities.
Of course, of course. So, Marla, you had also mentioned that aside from camps and aside from all of the history that you have done, you also are involved with racing and everything that goes along with mushing. And you talked about off air that you like to do the 6 and 8 dog class with your Alaskan Huskies. Do you travel on any type of sprint circuit? I know that's pretty popular, in particular in the Midwest and in the West. Do you guys have something like that up there, or do you do something a little different?
Oh, no, we definitely have it here because, for me as a mid-distance musher, that's my ultimate goal. I started when I had 1 litter of 5, and then I had a litter of 4. I started with 4-dog sprint, then 8-dog sprint, and then the Can-Am 30, and then, the 45-mile, the 60, the 100. My longest race to date is the Defi Tega 140-mile race up by Labrador City in Canada. And but I don't have the 50-mile terrain where I am in southern New England. And the past 2 winters have consistently been mud season every month, so we no longer have the consistent snow. So I'm hoping to actually get to Alaska this winter where I can finally do serious mid-distance training and my personal goal of finishing a 200-plus mile race. So that's always been my goal. But my lineage, Allie retired a sprint racing. It was a Marvin Cochran sprint racing dog, was a leader of his from the age of 1 to 3. And Allie adopted her. So that dog had sprint in her genes. And the male dog that I bred her with came from Swingley's Peppy lines. So had distance and as well as Andre Nadeau mid-distance. So in my breeding, I have sprint, distance, and mid-distance. My dogs can do anything. It's how I train them. And since we start training in September for 5 miles is our first run, when in sprint on the dryland circuit, you're never going more than 5 miles. So we kind of got into dryland mushing just for fun, and we've ended up, we do really well. I like to say I have the fastest Alaskan Husky team here on the east, but in the winter I have one of the slowest because then I'm all about conserving and wanting to finish the race. But when we dryland sprint, I just let them go, and they already have the miles, they already have the stamina, and they just have fun because they're going to go as fast as they can until they get tired, right? And then they'll slow down. But your sprint dogs,
of course.
Your sprint dogs, your hounds, your pointers, they won't slow down. And so whenever they mess up, like they blow the fencing, when I tell my dogs G, they're going to take the G because they have to know all their commands. So then we outperform them. Or if they're running, their second team is their seniors, and I'm still running adults. So I'll run 4, 6, and 8-dog rig because I have a team of 20-plus sled dogs. So I have enough dogs to run all the divisions. Where a lot of sprint mushers, they just have their focused 4-dog or 6-dog. In 2017, I almost went to the Dryland World Championships in Poland because I was the IFSS World Cup gold medalist for rig in North America and Canada and America. 2015, and now again this year, I got the bronze medal with ISRA in 6-dog rig. In 8-dog rig, I also have first in that with ISRA, but there's not enough races to have it be a medal race. So we love that. It was too expensive to go to Poland. Sweden is, of course, one of the homes of mushing, and it's actually half the price, and we're going. But I wish I could take 6 dogs. I wish I could do the 8-dog of a 6-dog because I would place better. With the 4 dogs, I'm running against the top sprint mushers in the world in Europe with hounds, with big Euro hounds. So, we just want to have fun and have happy, healthy dogs and do our best.
And I'm sure you will. And you've sort of led me into my next set of questions, which is the Dryland Championships that you're heading over to in Sweden. And if I could just take a quick step back, you had mentioned that your training is a little bit different than a lot of the sprint guys because you're training primarily for mid-distance. And again, I'm very familiar with that training technique because that's what I do with our dogs, and then we go out in the fall and run dry land, and I still get smoked by all of the sprinters, but it is a different type of training, isn't it? And I think my question to you is, for our listeners, is every dog's physique is different for their own sport, and it's very similar to human athletics. There are some people that are built for football, there are some people that are built for soccer, there are some people that are built for marathons or short track events like the 50-yard dash and whatnot. Can you explain a little bit about that difference between, your typical Alaskan Husky, what most people think of as Huskies, compared to what you typically see on the dryland circuit, that the houndier type dogs? How is that training different between the two dogs, if you can share a little bit, please?
Okay, so mid-distance training, I'm keeping them at around 10 miles per hour. I'm pacing them. Sometimes they're going slower, other times I'm letting them stretch and go faster, but we're keeping them at basically half the speed they'll sprint at, because we're building muscle and we're building endurance, and that they can do it for 70 miles. My longest time on the trail was a 12, 13-hour leg, a 4 to 6 hour rest, and then another one back. About a 70-mile leg, and we were taking our time. Whereas when I sprint, we had been clocked up to 20 miles per hour on, I think, 6-dog rig. And let me say, I have one litter that looks just like their mom, who was the sprint racing dog, because she was much leaner, and they're very houndy looking, and they are just gorgeous to watch run. But my third litter that Allie invited me to breed with her male leader, who was Beamer, who had just come in second in Quest and Iditarod that year with Alan and Allie, and then the following year won Quest. So she said, well, Beamer, and I was looking for a leggier male. He was actually smaller than my female, who was the smallest of all her siblings. That litter of 6, they're little, but they're actually in the sprint racing movie that Casey made. You know who I'm talking about? Yep. And and they're in it, and he's talking about how even distance dogs can sprint. And I'll run those 5 of them plus another one, little dogs in my 6-dog rig, and they fly as fast as my 4 big houndy dogs. So the Alaskan Husky can do anything. But typically, I'm up against dogs who are bigger, less fur, right, longer legs, bigger muscle. They have what we call those cantaloupes on their thighs, and they're built like a sprint runner, where you want to keep your Huskies lean because you're training them more like a marathon runner. But
that's a great analogy for sure. So, Marla, if we could now talk a little bit about the class that you're running in over in Sweden, and you've already mentioned the work that you did to potentially go to Poland a couple of years ago, but now you're heading over to run in the rig class, and I believe you said the 4-dog rig class, and you are the first one in our the athlete series that we were talking about that's heading over with the rig. So I have a bunch of questions for you.
Sure.
My first question is, are you traveling with 4 of your own dogs? And if you are, what kind of logistics does that entail? And then secondly, are you bringing along a rig, or are you going to be renting one over there or borrowing, or what?
Yep. So, I've only run my own dogs, especially when racing. I run an Arctic rig that's had a lot of adaptations to it. I run a 3-wheel rig. So for 4 dogs, you're still allowed 3 wheels. But for 6 and 8 internationally, they want you to be on 4 wheels. So I'm renting a rig, actually, with AXE, a company who's one of the sponsors, and it looks like quite a high-tech rig. It's got disc brakes and shocks and I got to practice on that rig. But I'm taking 4 dogs because really it's hard enough they only allow 3 per flight, so the logistics of getting 4 is hard enough. I'm taking my daughter, will be 15, and I'm taking one of my oldest teen handlers so that if I do have to split us up, the teens can go together and I can go by myself. So logistically, it's not easy bringing your dogs over, but I don't know a lot of mushers in Europe, and that's one reason I'm going. I'm looking forward to meeting other mushers. But I want to run my own dogs, and I'm going to rent a rig, and, we're just going to have fun and go for it. I hear in Poland 2 years ago it was a mud fest, which is always fun.
Those are fun. I love getting out there and running in the mud for sure. So back to the rig on that segment for just a second. You had mentioned that you're going to be renting a rig over there. I have rented bikes before for triathlons. I've gone to races where I didn't use my own bike, and I had really struggled on a bike that I didn't know well. You're not used to the ergonomics and where the shifters are and all of that. Is there a learning curve, do you think, with jumping on a rig that's not yours? And do you think that that's going to play at all into what's going to happen out there on the trail?
Well, I have it for the time I'm there, so I definitely will go and take some practice, and when I do my first practice run on it, I'll just put 2 dogs on, so I'll work my way up to it. My rigs, the wheels, I think, are all 24-inch. It's all low to the ground. This, they say it's a little more like a Tracer. It's the company is, AXAECO, a Swedish company. And so when you got the disc brakes, they stop on a dime. You got to be careful. And the suspension, it just seems pretty high tech. It's got a big front wheel and the smaller back wheels. So yeah, I will hit my brakes before a turn. I'm not ashamed to slow down on the tight turns. It does allow me, and I have discovered that I don't really lose that much because I gain in control. I do find with my big dogs, they're a little harder to hold back, so that's why I'll do that. With my smaller dogs, I let them go a little more because the brakes work just a little better. On my Arctic rig, when you're running 6 and 8 dogs, the brakes just slow you down. They can't stop you. They hold you at the beginning and they catch you at the end. So it's thrilling doing the dryland racing and just going as fast as you can. And it's kind of like rollerblading for me, the way you dig into the turns from the inside. But I've also rode a Togo rig with Saucier from Canada, and that you're higher up. So each rig does have its differences. I wish I could bring my rig, but I think I'm just going to hope I can get all my 4 dogs over there, and then you trust your instincts.
I think it's going to be great for you, and I'm excited to follow along online. Marla, we have just a few minutes left here on our recording, and I have a couple of questions that I typically ask all of our guests. But I have one final question to ask in regard to your Sweden trip that I've asked most people already. A lot of folks on the team are pretty much jumping on a plane and getting there just a day or two before, and then jumping on another plane and getting home as quick as they can. And you had mentioned that you're taking over a couple of people with you, including one of your junior handlers. Are you guys going to get a chance to do a little bit of sightseeing over in Sweden? I know it may be a little difficult with several dogs in tow, but man, what a beautiful country that is.
Well, I'm taking my daughter, and she's 15, and then my oldest sled dog student and longest time junior handler, who is 17, and we're going to leave on Sunday, and because we have a nonstop out of Boston that arrives on Monday, and we'll be there for a week, and then we leave the following Monday. So I hope the couple days before we'll get to kind of, see the little sights and then be there for the rigs don't go to the weekend anyway. So, and also by having 3 of us and having 4 dogs, there's a little more help taking care of the dogs. I just have to hope by then I'll have somebody taking care of the other 20 dogs I'm leaving behind. So
right.
It's always,
that's always a chore.
Yeah.
All right. So my last question to you, Marla, is I ask everybody that's on our show, whether they're 1-dog canicrossers up to Iditarod veterans, and that is if somebody came to you looking for advice, and I'm sure that you've probably answered this question since you talked about your camps, but if somebody comes to you and asks for advice, they want to get involved with mushing, whether they're wanting to do a rec team or one-day run Iditarod, what would you tell them if they asked?
Well, what comes to me is, touring is my business, but racing is my passion. And I was a martial artist for years. I was a blues singer for most of my adult life. I'm a mama, and now I'm a musher. And if you're going to be a musher, you have to have a passion for it because, like martial arts, it is a way of life. Basically, it is my whole life. Dogs and daughter is my life. Haven't had a partner in about 6 or 7 years now because I just keep having more dogs. So if you're going to get involved with dogs, you have to care about them because their health and their happiness and, that's just as important as mine. We are so interdependent on each other. And that's, but that's the joy, that's the reward.
I could not have said it better myself, and I'm sure that every dog musher that is listening is probably nodding their head with exactly what you said. It truly is a way of life, and they become our life. They are the ones that take all of our time, all of our effort, all of our money, just about all of it, and we do that for that passion for sure. Thank you very much for that. I really appreciate that advice. So lastly, Marla, right before we go, and please hang on after we close, but how can folks follow along with you? I know we're going to share some links and things over on your show page when it releases, but where is the best place for people to go to check out your dogs, your kennel, and all that?
Well, I have my website, Hilltown Sled Dogs, www.hilltownsleddogs.com. I have a Facebook page, and that's also Hilltown Sled Dogs. It hasn't had any entries the past couple of weeks because I've been so busy with camps, even though I have somebody who helps me with it. And I do have an Instagram, but I'd say the Hilltown Sled Dogs, whether you Twitter it, Facebook it, or Google it, that's me. that's me.
Excellent.
And the team.
Today's guest is Marla Beebe. She is one of the athletes that's heading over to Sweden to run in the rig class, the 4-dog rig class coming up in October. It was a pleasure having you on today, Marla, and I hope that we can talk again soon.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you. On behalf of my guest today, this is Robert Forto for Mushing Radio. We will see you guys next time. Goodbye.
From DogWorks Radio, this is Mushing Radio. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we invite you to subscribe in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll find a link on the episode notes. You can tap or swipe on the episode cover art, and you'll see some offers from our sponsors. You can support our show by supporting them. If you like what you have heard, we would love it if you could give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends how to subscribe too. Your hosts are Alex Stein and Robert Forto. Our producer is Robert Forto, created for DogWorks Radio. Did you know that Alaska DogWorks trains service dogs for those in need throughout North America? Each and every service dog that is trained through the Lead Dog Service Dog Program and Michelle Forto and her team has an individual training plan. We train for autistic, mobility, psychiatric, and PTSD for our soldiers for service work. If you know of someone that may need a service dog, please take a moment and check out Alaska DogWorks on social media and at alaskadogworks.com.